I'm Trisha Karp from Powerful Speaking for Powerful Women. I want to talk to you today about pausing. I had a client say to me the other day or ask me, how do you pause like you do? Your pauses are so amazing. I want to pause like that. So I thought I'd speak about that today and why pauses are important. But first of all, I will just say that most of us are very uncomfortable with silence. You might have noticed that in a conversation if there are silences and perhaps you want to quickly rush and try and fill in that silence with something so you start talking. All right, so I acknowledge that pausing it can seem a little bit unnatural or a bit uncomfortable if it's not something you are used to doing. Pauses are super important though. They're important when you are wanting to emphasize a point and make sure it really lands, whether that's with an audience or in a conversation. So you stop for a moment after you make that point to ensure it has had time to land, to be heard. That's the first part. Pauses are also super important in conversations like negotiating. You need to be really comfortable with silences when you are asking for what you want and putting it out there and being willing to wait for the response. Super important skill to have. They're also really important in confronting kind of conversations where you might be talking about something that's really vulnerable, or a conversation where there's a little bit of conflict or there has been some conflict. The pauses allow us to manage our energy. And that's another thing I always say. If you're someone who, when you're giving a talk, you tend to speak a little bit too quickly because you don't really want to stand there and you would just like to get it over and done with, and then you run over yourself and then you forget what you're about to say or what you had in your head, and now you've gone too far and and you freeze, right? I mean, it's awful. That is an awful situation to be in. The pauses help there too. The pauses allow you to take a moment to gather yourself, to gather your thoughts, and then to keep going. And we often think that a pause will take a really long time, that it will be uncomfortable for the people in our audience because we're sort of just not saying anything for a moment. And that's just not true. It's just not true. So I'm inviting you to use pauses, and I don't want you to have to think too hard about when you might need to pause or when it would be better not to pause, because then it will come across as very unnatural. I spoke in my last video about being in your power zone. When you're in your power zone and you're connected with what you're saying, those pauses will naturally happen. It's why I speak about the power zone so much, because it really is the foundation for speaking powerfully. And without it, you can't. Not a bunch of skills or techniques, not a focus on, okay, I'm about to say something important, so I better just pause here for a moment and count to 3 in my head, and then I can keep going again. No. That's not what we do when we speak powerfully. It's allowing spaces to naturally arise. So that's what I want to encourage you to do. I'm here to help. You can find out more at trishakarp.com.